Thank you for tuning in. My name is Keaton Hain. I'm an Assistant Dean of Admission with Colgate. I've been with Colgate for about 5 going on 6 years. Currently recruiting in places like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. But I've gone all over the country and I've read applications outside the world too. So it's great to be here with you. I'm joined today by an awesome student who is going to be helping us through this session today. So I'll have her introduce herself, and then I'll break down as to what we can expect. And we're going to have a blast all in about 30 minutes. So Hannah, the floor is yours.
Cool. So hi guys, my name is Hannah Tupper. I'm a rising junior here. I'm from Canton, New York, currently majoring in English, minoring in psychology. Might change that to a double major, not sure yet. Outside of admissions, sort of some extracurriculars. I'm a writer for the Maroon News, so that's our student-led newspaper. I'm on Link staff, so I interact with first years during orientation. I'm an intern for the Office of National Fellowships and Scholarships, and then just sort of involved in some clubs on campus for fun.
Awesome. So, totally not busy at all, right? I always like to say. So, folks, Hannah and I will be going back and forth, giving you an idea of sort of what the liberal arts is and how it plays out here at Colgate. We will do our best to leave some time for some questions at the end, about 5 to 10 minutes. But as we go here, you'll see both a chat and a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to use those. Hannah and I will do our best to answer those questions if they're quick ones while the other one's talking. But if not, and they require a little bit more explanation, we can save those for the end. But with that being said, let's not waste any more time and let's dive right in. So, talking about the term liberal arts, because at least when I was going through the process, I had no idea what the heck that was. Oftentimes, a big misconception is liberal arts is very art heavy, right? Painting and poetry and theater and performance and things along those lines. And while those are parts of a liberal arts education, that's really just the tip of the iceberg. If you want to take things back 10,000 feet, a school that is a liberal arts school is just a school that allows you a heck of a lot of academic freedom to decide what you want to do, what you're passionate about, what kind of professors you want to get in front of, and what kind of classes you want to take. At Colgate, we have you walk a pretty wide valley as opposed to a narrow path along your 4 years. You don't have to come in declared for a major. A third of your courses are reserved for whatever it is that you want to take. And how the liberal arts is different at Colgate, it's a combination of world-class faculty and opportunities with some awesome examples of personalization. Folks who really get to know who you are, again, where you're from, what you're passionate about, all that good stuff. Freedom, to summarize liberal arts in one word, freedom when it comes to academics. Hannah, for you, when you were going through your own process, what about the liberal arts was attractive to you, or was that even, like at first, were you looking for liberal arts schools? Did you stumble into this new idea and you're like, ooh, I like that, that's what I want to do? Chat us up there.
Yeah, so I have sort of 2 answers to that. So first, I grew up right by St. Lawrence University, which is another private liberal arts college. So I was really familiar with that, sort of growing up near that environment. I sort of understood what that was, and also really like that small sort of close-knit community. So I came into like my college sort of looking for that as well. So my top 3 schools ended up being Colgate, Bucknell, and Lehigh, which is a pretty common trio, I know. So there was that. And then also the other side of that was I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to major in. I started actually out as a biology major before transitioning to English. So it was honestly probably a good thing that I chose over liberal arts school. So because I was pretty uncertain as to what I wanted to do, I wanted to have that freedom to sort of try different classes, test out different subjects in different fields, and sort of figure out what I actually liked and wanted to do and pursue. And Colgate seemed like a good fit since I did have a lot of that freedom and leeway, and wasn't really restricted to taking specific classes.
From biology to English, talk about the total 180. Students, that's a pretty common story, and that's an okay thing to happen. In fact, I think it's a great thing to happen. Again, the beauty about the liberal arts, you don't have to be decided. You have the flexibility to change your mind. And the cool thing about a liberal arts school like Colgate is you may be taking a class in one particular subject area, but that could actually be counting towards credit for multiple different degrees. This happens all the time with classes like history and political science, international relations, and psychology, even peace and conflict studies. All sorts of classes will count for multiple different subject areas. You're never really wasting time at any point. And sort of one of those support systems that's there to make sure that you're taking advantage of this liberal arts experience as best you can are our professors, your professors in the future. To summarize, the professors at Colgate students, they're rock stars. They are awesome. There's an intentionality about them wanting to teach you at a place like Colgate. The beauty is that our class sizes are on the smaller side, right? Our average class size is 17. Our student to faculty ratio is 9:1. Very rarely do you find those large lecture style courses. So that means professors really get to know you. You can make strong relationships and bonds with them. I've heard of lots of students going over to professors' houses. A lot of our professors live in the village of Hamilton, which sits at the bottom of Colgate's Hill. And those students will have meals and they'll do study sessions with their professor. Some students even get to house sit, babysit, dog sit. So if that is the level that you're looking for, that personalization, it's really something that Colgate prides itself on and can give you the option of. It's very difficult to become a face in the crowd. Professors will know your name. I know I've said it a couple times already, but I always like to emphasize that. No one's here on our campus by accident, like none of you are in this webinar by accident, and that just sort of makes the academic environment that much better. Hannah, for you so far in your academic career, how have you found support from these professors? What are some good conversations you've had to steer you in the direction that you're currently traveling? Chat us up there.
Yeah, so something that is really basic that I like to talk about is just the fact that professors have office hours. So they're sort of required to have 3 hours of office hours every week. But it extends far beyond that time. Even if you can't sort of go during the regular office hours, I've never been denied sort of speaking to a professor. I can just sort of email or even text a professor sort of wanting to talk in an hour or 30 minutes or something like that. And they're always more than willing to meet. And then also within those conversations, it extends way beyond what you talk about in class and sort of course material. You can have just really personal conversations. A lot of times professors will just check in with you and ask you genuinely how you're doing. And that's something that sort of is really small, but has a big impact. I think the first time that I was asked that, I was a little bit taken aback because I was wow, you're actually asking about sort of how I'm actually doing instead of a superficial oh, I'm doing well or something like that. So they really do want to get to know you and sort of the things that you're doing and stuff like that. Going in a little bit of a different direction, one of the professors that I had this past semester, I was in an SRS class, so it stands for Sophomore Residential Seminar. So there's an abroad component to it. My abroad experience got delayed by a year, but I got really invested in the class and stuff as a whole. And so I wanted to sort of keep up with the work that we were doing through that time gap of when my class ended and when we would go abroad. So I literally just asked my professor if I could work in the lab and just sort of work with him in that fall semester, in this upcoming semester, to do lab work, work on different lab skills, just sort of prep for our trip in the spring. And he was yeah, sure. Do you want it to be a paid position or have course credit for it? So it's something that even though I'm an English major, I get to work with bio and ENST related research. And that was something as informal as me just talking to my professor after class and just asking him that simple question. So your professors are really looking out for you as people. And if you show genuine interest in something, they're going to reciprocate that back with different opportunities. But they also do really want to get to know you as people and on that personal level. So in that way, I felt very supported by the faculty and staff at Colgate.
And Hannah, that's an awesome story, and I'm glad that you shared that. But you would agree, I hope, that your story is not sort of a once in the blue moon, never going to happen again occasion. It happens all the time, students, and really all you have to do is say hello to your professor and ask. I know it can be maybe a little intimidating to talk to some of these folks, especially sometimes if you spend some time on their bio pages and see all the cool stuff that they've done, but you know, they're really there for you. Their time teaching is only going to be better if they can help students like yourself and help you be more successful. One of the ways that they connect with you early on, and I know that we had a question about this, has to do with our core curriculum. So these are required classes that everyone has to take. But please don't groan at that phrase. I know that can be a tendency to, you know, when you hear that term required courses, everyone's like, no. But at Colgate, it's very different. So I'm going to list the 4 classes for you a little slower. The classes that all of you will have to take are Legacies of the Ancient World, which has you read things like the Bible and the Quran and the Odyssey and the Iliad, deal with more ancient texts. Challenges of Modernity, which has you read more modern day authors like W.E.B. Du Bois, Virginia Woolf, Art Spiegelman, Charles Darwin, folks like that. Number 3 is Communities and Identities, which has you pick a region or group of people that you want to learn more about. So California, the Arctic, the Iroquois, Russia, the Middle East, Cuba, even the internet are options that fall under this Communities and Identities umbrella. And then Scientific Perspectives, which I like to playfully nickname science classes for non-science majors. This teaches you about the scientific process without just having you crank out equations all day. So you can take courses such as modern day voting technology, genes and human fate, sport and human anatomy, molecules that rock your world, and even forbidden knowledge are all on the table. By the time you work your way through these 4 courses, you actually hit 15 or 20 different subject areas. So even in these early moments, we're exposing you to a lot of just different fields of study. The goal of the core is to really have that one moment where you find that one little thing, that sparkling little thing where you're like, I like that, I want to know more about that. And then maybe next semester you take a class in that subject area. So that, in a nutshell, is what your required classes will look like. Hannah, for you, you know, so far in your career, could you highlight a favorite course that you've taken? Doesn't necessarily have to be a core course, just one that so far is sticking out to you right now.
Yeah, so I think I might do 2 just because I've already touched on SRS. So one of my favorite classes was one that I just took recently. It was an environmental studies class. I had Professor Frank Fry, which is, he's pretty infamous on campus, probably one of the most like well-known professors, but he's just like a really, really great professor. He gave us a lot of freedom as far as like what we wanted to focus on when talking about, our project was like focused on Uganda. So we did a lot of talking about that, but he did give us a lot of like freedom as far as like what we wanted to focus on, what sort of discussions that we wanted to have, sort of gave us the reins to sort of lead discussion and things like that. And really had a lot of like trust and faith in us to do those things and sort of have these like really constructive conversations, which we did. So that was really great, just feeling like I had sort of like the opportunity to sort of direct my own class in a way. And then on the flip side of that, one of my other favorite classes was a creative writing class that I took for nonfiction. It was the intro class, but that was just a really great experience. We sort of read different works about like different types of nonfiction writing, which I had no idea that there were so many. So there's things like a braided essay, a walking essay, stuff like that. So we'd read different works and then sort of make our own attempt at an essay. So that was really great opportunity for me to sort of explore and experiment with different writing styles, and also sort of get like a better sense of what nonfiction was. So that was also a really great class that I enjoyed.
Wonderful. I myself was an English major as well, so it's always great to hear awesome stories about creative writing and things along those lines. Now, Hannah, you sort of teased it earlier, but I'll come back to it in a minute. But students, the one thing I want to sort of get across before we break for questions here, because there's a lot of good ones that are coming through. There's a lot of opportunity beyond just your normal courses. Hannah has sort of teased out both of these. One is research. And of course, it shouldn't be a surprise. You've probably heard of research happening at other schools before, but at a liberal arts school like Colgate, the cool thing is that the majority of our students on our campus are undergrads. Out of our population of 3,000 and some change, really, only 12 of them are graduate level students. Everyone else is an undergrad, so that means all of the research goes to students 18 to 21, 22 years old. You don't have to compete with master's and PhD level students for those same level of opportunities. You can travel, you can get published, you can stick around in the summertime and tap into Colgate funding, which is about $800,000 of funding we set aside for students just to conduct their research in the summertime. So about 83% of our students tend to do research. I'm not really a numbers person. I tend to shy away from them. I don't think they always really tell the true story of what a campus is, but 83% at an undergraduate liberal arts school, that's almost unheard of. So I will share that one because I think it's pretty valuable. The other thing that I want to make sure that everyone knows about is, while we love our little campus, and you will meet some great people and have access to some great resources, we do believe it's important for you to get out into the world over the course of your 4 years through what we call off-campus study, but this is just our version of study abroad. But rather than have me drone at you and tell you sort of what that is, Hannah, could I kick this over to you? Would you be so kind to sort of elaborate on the different ways that students can go off campus, and then share your own experience as about where you intend to go?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different semester-long experiences. You can do a Colgate study group, and this is when you travel with a Colgate professor and other Colgate students, and you sort of study with that group when you're abroad. So it's a little bit more structured. You might go on like daily or overnight excursions to different places like a theater or like some sort of national park, things like that. And it's also pretty tied to departments. So London is a really popular spot for English, history, and economics majors to go. I personally didn't want to go on a Colgate study group just because I didn't want to take 4 English classes with a professor that I could access right here on campus. So I'm applying for an approved program, and I hope to go to Trinity College Dublin this coming spring. There's a couple of different options with that. There's like different programs that you can apply to within approved programs. So sometimes there might be like an internship tied to it. There might be like teaching opportunities if it's more of an educational studies one. So there are like differences in the approved programs that you can apply to, or you can just have that regular sort of abroad experience. And then we also have an alternative to students who maybe just don't want to spend the semester abroad. Maybe you're double majoring and have too many required courses. Maybe you're on some sort of pre-professional track, can't afford to send a semester off. We have extended studies, and this is a 4 to 6 week program where you can travel abroad either during winter or summer break. So this allows Colgate students to sort of have that abroad experience without having to compromise an entire semester.
Awesome. A little bit of everything for everyone, I always like to say. Beauty of the liberal arts. Ultimately, folks, there's not one true way. There's not a right way to do college at a liberal arts institution. You can go off campus once or twice, or you can do an extended study, a full semester program. You can major and minor, double major, whatever it is. There's a lot of different formulas for success at a place like Colgate. So we are at 4:20 Eastern Standard Time, which is exactly where I wanted to be. Hannah, we have some great questions here. So let's do our best to navigate through those. Let's see here. Let's see. And if you're scrolling through, if there's one that jump out to you, please feel free to unmute and answer one of those.
Yeah, well, there's one in the chat box, which is really funny that I gave a tour to you. So that's so fun to see you again. So I kind of came a little bit late into getting into psychology classes. So I've currently only taken like required classes, so the intro class and a research methods class, which sort of teaches you how to write a psychology paper. But I'm looking at sort of taking a couple of different classes I'm trying to get into right now. One's called like racism and prejudice, and the other one's called social bonds. So those are a couple of different options for psych classes that I'm really like looking forward to taking and really want to take. So I don't have a favorite one at this moment, but those are some of the ones that I'm looking at right now.
Here's a good one. Hannah, I'll pitch this right back to you. How do you think a liberal arts degree sets one up for future success after college? Big one.
Yeah, that is quite a big question. I would say that honestly, it just gives you the necessary tools that you need to sort of apply it into whatever sort of field or interest you end up going to afterwards. So for me, like my biggest takeaways is the fact that I will know how to like really write eloquently, have like really good both verbal and nonverbal communication, just sort of like having really good critical thinking skills, just being able to sort of like ask questions beyond like what people are telling you. And also something that I really value about a liberal arts education, especially at Colgate, is the fact that I can learn from both my professors and students as well. A lot of classes are really discussion based, and oftentimes students will talk just as much, if not more, than the professors in the class. And so that's something really great. I think you can get just such a really well-rounded education, have a lot of different perspectives from a lot of different people, and just like learn so much more than you would at maybe another school where it's a lot more lecture based, and there's a more like set curriculum where they're sort of teaching you the things that they think are required, versus sort of having a little bit more openness in what you talk about and what you discuss and what you get to touch on. So
Hannah, here's a good question I think I could possibly address as well, but we have a couple recurring questions that are ultimately asking like, what separates Colgate apart from a lot of other liberal arts schools? I know you said that you were looking at sort of other institutions, and ultimately you've only been a student at one, so you have a little bit of limited knowledge, but so far at least, and you don't have to mention schools by name, but just as you were considering your options, what set here apart from, the other ones, I guess?
yeah, I would say one thing was just sort of like how welcoming Colgate felt for me when I visited. Just sort of the campus in and of itself, but also like the students and professors that I got to talk to. That was something for me that set it apart from other schools, just like feeling really connected to students and stuff really early on. I would say again, like not having that structure. I know that some liberal arts colleges do have like a little bit more of like a structured curriculum. So I think like having even more sort of leeway with that is really great. And then also a really big one that we love to emphasize at Colgate specifically is just like community. I feel really close to a lot of students on campus, a lot of professors, even a lot of people like on faculty and staff and stuff all over Colgate. You can get so close with a lot of people. And it really makes you like feel like a person, like a real person on a campus, rather than sort of just like a student in a lecture and stuff like that. So I think that really sets Colgate apart, in that like you really can sort of find your own like identity and have one here, and be like recognized by like everyone else on campus.
I think another thing that separates Colgate from a lot of other similar liberal arts schools is how close and entwined with actually the village at the bottom of our hill that Colgate is. Sometimes you can find places where the full-time residents sort of resent the fact that they're in a college town, but that's really not the case in Hamilton, New York, where Colgate is located. You'll find that it's very difficult, students, to find the line of sort of where one ends and the other begins, because there's a lot of crossover between the two. We have students, who will go down and hang out in the village. There's neat little shops and restaurants. Our athletic facilities are sort of a nice bridge between the two. We'll have students who will volunteer with the local school district as firefighters and ambulance EMT staff. So that's another thing that I think makes Colgate a little different. Hannah, we also had a lot of questions just about like the geographically where Colgate is, and sort of, do you ever feel, because it's not a bigger city, that you're isolated, that there's nothing to do? Do you find that you need to like get out sometimes and just you need a new setting?
Yeah, okay. So I might be a little bit biased with this just because I also grew up in a small rural liberal arts college town. So for me, it's like pretty familiar. But I would say for the most part, no. Even though like I did have the opportunity to sort of leave campus and I had like a car on campus and stuff, I didn't really leave that often, mostly because I didn't really think that I needed to or had to. Colgate offers so many different programs during the week and also on the weekends, between like commons events happening, speakers being brought in, clubs hosting events, having meetings, all of that stuff. There's really like always something to do here. And even if you want to like go in town, you can go to the farmer's market during the warmer months. You can also sort of go into town and get lunch or dinner with people. And then we also have I'm a pretty outdoorsy person. So we have a few like, we're near the Catskills and sort of near the Adirondacks. If you do want to get away, like you can go hiking and stuff, I guess. But I really like don't really feel a need to leave campus that often. So I would say like I don't really feel isolated just because there are like so many programs happening on campus and also like stuff to do in the town. So for me, I don't really feel the need to, but also a little bit of bias with that. So take that as you will.
I think maybe one of our last questions, I'm getting a lot of questions, Hannah, about the actual atmosphere in the classroom and what sort of the balance is between like larger lecture and roundtable discussions. So could you talk on your own experience? Like what have the majority of your classes been like? What's your biggest class been like? What's your smallest class so far? Just clue us in there.
Yeah, okay, so I've had quite a wide variety of classes. So psychology is a really popular major here. And then also like within the psychology department, in order to take any other upper level classes, you have to take the intro class. So intro psychology is our largest class offered at Colgate. It's capped at 200 students. So that is pretty large. But just to add a little bit of nuance to that, you do have 4 professors that are teaching that class as well. So while you do have that bigger class, you are going to have more than one professor, more than one resource to talk to. And then there's also additionally will be upperclassmen psychology majors who will sit in on classes, who will lead like peer tutoring stuff, so they can also be additional resources for students. And that goes for other sort of larger inter classes like economics and biology. Those are typically around 75 students. So those are a little bit bigger, but you'll have those additional resources again. But most of my classes have hovered around anywhere from like 17 to 25 students at its max. So that's typically where most of my classes are size-wise. My smallest one was 12 students. So that was really, really small and really nice. But most often, yeah, a lot of students, a lot of times you'll sit literally at like an oval table, so you won't even be in desks. So everyone can face each other, and it really facilitates a lot of discussion and stuff like that. So interpsych, big lecture, but I've also had round table discussion type classes with really small students. So
brilliant. Well, let's see. 429. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for your answers. I think it's always helpful when I can have a student like yourself sort of back up the things that I am saying, and I think it's safe to say that the students enjoyed more hearing from you than they did from me, that's for sure. But students, the one more thing I want to wrap up with, because I see there's a lot of questions about it. Oftentimes, when you see a liberal arts school, sometimes that can come with a higher price tag. I've gotten a lot of questions here about financial aid and the competitiveness of it and things along those lines. To tell you how Colgate operates its financial aid, so we are need aware, but we do meet 100% of demonstrated need. For those of you who don't know what that is, if you apply to Colgate, you'll fill out 2 forms called the FAFSA and the CSS profile that ultimately will come up with this thing called an EFC, your expected family contribution, your piggy bank, your safe that you can use to pay for one all-inclusive year of Colgate. Whatever gap is between that all-inclusive number and that piggy bank, that safe, that's your need. And if we accept you and you're applying for financial aid, we're required to give you every single piece of that need. So our average aid package we gave out for our students who are joining us this coming year was about $53,000. The majority of that money is grant money, which is money that you do not have to pay back. And a student on average graduates with about $14,000 combined after 4 years in student debt. Please take it from someone who did not go to Colgate, who's paying off their student loans right now. That is an awesome number to be able to graduate with. International students still receive financial aid as well, though it is a little bit more competitive, but we do offer it. But if any sort of specific questions come up, you're welcome to reach out to our Office of Financial Aid. You can find that information on our website. They're more than happy to talk through items with you. But with that being said, we have exceeded our time by just 1 minute. Here's the last thing I'm going to do. I am going to put my email down in this chat. Students, you're welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions. Even if I'm not your regional dean, it's still my job to help you through this very oftentimes stressful process. But thank you all for tuning in. We had 102 of you, so really, really big thanks. Again, if you have any questions, please let us know. Hannah, thank you for your time, and I hope everyone stays healthy and well. And I look forward to working with hopefully all of you in some form or fashion in the coming year or years to come. All right, take care, everybody, and have a great day.